punctuation. Punctuation is worth putting the effort in, because even come the actual exam, I would say about half the children are getting less than half right. It's a competition. You know that the enemy is weak in that area, so get good at that. You don't have to be brilliant at it, just get marginally better. You only need one more mark better than them to be on the winning team rather than the losing team. So just don't aim to be brilliant, just aim to be marginally better than you are, and the chances are that will make you marginally better than everyone else. And just keep aiming for just one more mark. Now, it's always tempting to do this line by line, and I just did this when going over these notes. I sort of had my book here and I was going, and I'm thinking, oh, I should have my glasses, but I haven't. It's easier if you do it as a passage. So I'll read it to you first, just so that you get a feel for it. First, read the instructions. Find and underline the punctuation mistakes. The text is from Charles Dickens' Nicholas Nickleby, but we have put in the mistakes. There is one or none per line. Can you see how slowly I read it? The instructions are a love letter from the examiner to you. Mr. Nickleby looked about him for the means of repairing his capital, now sadly reduced by his increase in his family and the expense of their education. What does that mean? It means they're a bit broke because they've got so many children and they're sending them away to school. Speculate with it, said Mrs. Nickleby. Speculate, my dear, said Mr. Nickleby, as though in doubt. Why not? Asked Mrs. Nickleby. Because, my dear, if we should lose it, rejoined Mr. Nickleby, who was a slow and time-taking speaker. If we should lose it, we shall no longer be a love to live. What does that mean, a love to live? Do you think it's meant to be able to live, my dear? Fiddle, said Mrs. Nickleby. Do you know what? I'm going to put an asterisk there in case it's the spellings. Probably isn't. Rachel's pretty thorough about this kind of thing. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get out our Punctuation Pixie. Da-da-da-da! So there's his eyes. And we're going to go over the whole text with our finger. Remember, the good Lord gave you a bum finger and a bogey finger. One for scratching your bum and the other for picking bogies. And we're going to look for speech marks. Do all the speech marks open and close. Right, number 9. No speech marks. Number 10, yes, they open, they close. Number 11, they open. Ooh, look, 11, they didn't close. Speculate, my dear, said Mr. Nickleby. Always try and use silly voices. So if I just write the numbers here, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So which number was that? That was 10, and we wanted some speech marks, didn't we? Oh, no, we didn't, Sarah. Look carefully. It was 11 that we wanted speech marks. Why not? Asked Mr. Nickleby. Because, my dear, we should lose it. I'm reading. We don't need to read it. We're looking for speech marks, aren't we? 12 they open, 12 they close. 13 they open and they close. And then he starts speaking again, blah, 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 blah. And then they close at the finish. Oh, look at the bottom one. We could have missed that, couldn't we? Fiddle, said Mrs. Nickleby, sounding a bit like the Coleman. But she wanted speech marks at the beginning of fiddle. Now, let's see. Exclamation marks. Are there any exclamation marks? Do you know, I would have put an exclamation mark after fiddle. But she definitely needed opening speech marks. So, no, and you'll find some people still stick with this rule that you always end with a comma when you're doing dialogue. But it doesn't really hold true, because if you look at 11, we've got a full stop there, and modern practices don't do that. So I would have got that wrong if I'd given her an exclamation mark. Anywhere else? No. Next thing. Actually, do you know what you could do? Speculate with it. Number 10. I think I would have been tempted to put an exclamation mark in there, but something else is happening. Then we'll come back to it. So brackets. Any brackets? Quick scan up and down. Now always be careful with brackets, because supposing you've got sort of 8 lines, sometimes what happens is, we'll change colours for this. Not that one. they have a bracket that closes there that should have opened there, but that one isn't there. So what happens is there'll be something else happening on this line, like say a comma before the and or something, which is allowable in some circumstances. And children go, oh, that's definitely not right. And then, so they'll miss that, miss the opening bracket, and then they'll see this random bracket closing and say, that was wrong. And so that bracket ends up costing them 8 out of 12 marks. So that's a quarter of the marks, which is quite a lot. So watch out for brackets. If it turns up, treat it with respect. But there are none on here. Now, question marks. Oh, look, we've still got our change colour, haven't we? His little ears and his little dangly earrings. So we're looking for question marks. Scan, number 9, number 10, number 11. Speculate, my dear. He's asking a question. He's got a question mark. Why not? Asked Mrs. Nickleby. She's got a question mark. No other questions. Now we come into capitals. Now that's his hat. Da-da-da-da. Any missing or wrongly used capitals? Now there are a couple here. Mr. Nickleby. So he wanted a capital N in number 9. 10, 11 looks fine. Oh, yes. Why not? Asked Mrs. Nickleby. So if you go down to number 12, we want a little a for asked. Now, I know there's the full stop at the bottom of the question mark beforehand, but that was the ending of Mrs. Nickleby's sentence. Our sentence is why not? Asked Mrs. Nickleby, because we want to know who said it. You can't just have a random or not. So our sentence needs the A. Mrs. Nickleby's sentence has finished. Oh, quickly scan down in case there are any more. It's only 13 left, isn't it? So it's 10 and 13 that we only need to look to for the rest. So now let's have a look at full stops. Are there any missing or wrongly used full stops? Again, we're only looking at 10 and 13. You see, 10, there's something funny going at the end of that, speculate with it, but I think that's a comma issue. And then number 13, because my dear, we should lose it, comma, speech marks, rejoin Mr. Nickleby, who was, oh, I should have said slow, a slow and time-consuming speaker. If we should lose it, we shall no longer be able to be a love to live. A love to live? I don't like that. My dear. Yeah, he needs a full stop there, doesn't he, after my dear. So 13, we've got the full stop at the end because he's finished speaking. Full stop, close speech marks. And then that only brings us to number 10. We'll quickly finish our Punctuation Pixie. Those are for apostrophes like couldn't, wouldn't, shouldn't, and the dog spool, that sort of thing. And then finally it comes down to commas. Now this is what we've got wrong with comma in number 10. Speculate with it. Can you see in the passage they've got speech marks? Oh, is that near my photo? Let's rub that out and we'll do it over here. They've got speech marks, comma, said Mrs. Watson. It should be the other way around. She's finished speaking, speculate with it, comma, speech marks, said Mrs. Watson. So the commas just needs budging over that in the wrong place. As I say, with the do it as a passage rather than line by line, because if you do it line by line, you can so easily fall into the tricks. And when you're talking out the dialogue, always use silly voices best you can.